So hi everyone. Awesome day going on, such cool sessions, right? So this one is making NUnit xamarin better for unit testing. So hi. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Sweekriti. I work at Microsoft in the mobile customer advisory team. I am coming to you live from San Francisco. I understand we've got a ton of people from a lot of different places, so this is super cool. My pastimes include sending the EU David GIF to David Orton. So if you want to, please feel free to tweet that at him right now. He really appreciates it. And also, I'm a huge Xamarin fan, so yay. All right, so let's just get into this, right? So what is NUnit? What is NUnit Xamarin? Why am I here not talking about Xamarin UITests? Because that's usually what I do, right? Let's be honest. But let's take a short step back. Let's see what's happening. So what happened is, let me set this up so it makes more sense. So around like early in the lockdown, lockdown this year, so like April-ish, my coworker Mike comes up to me and he's like, hey, I have a framework. I have two frameworks I kind of want to compare. The Xamarin frameworks. I want to see, like check out how the perf is and how each behaves and things like that. I needed to work on iOS and Android, and I want to do some sort of like comparative reporting. I want to be able to sort of see how, calling certain methods and stuff like that, how it works. And then he comes and says that to me, and Mike's awesome. I love working with Mike. So I said, okay, cool, awesome, Mike, let's totally do it. Also, we're all stuck at home. Honestly, what else was there to do? So I was happy to do whatever different thing I could find at that point, right? So he comes. So essentially, what I wanted to show today is what we ended up creating to, fit this problem statement that, Mike came to me with. So the premise is I'm essentially abstracting out like one portion of what we created. So it's slightly POC, but slightly not POC. So everything I present today works, and you'll see it works as I show it to you working. But there's also like bits and pieces that I've pulled away, and there's certain like assumptions that we're running with, which I want to make clear right now. We're not talking about what framework it is that we're testing. We're not talking about the tests itself or how to write those tests. These are unit tests. That's all we're going to work with. Also, as this, like, again, abstracting it out a little bit more, what we're essentially, so we're going, like, I will not be focusing on how the project is structured or how you want to, include that framework and things like that. That's something that's sort of outside of the scope. The idea that I wanted to do was I wanted to make this sort of like a plug and play situation. If we want to like do the sort of testing or comparative analysis for any sort of framework, it shouldn't matter what I do, like what I use for today as a sample, right? So I just kind of wanted to walk you through what we wanted to accomplish and how we did it. And so we're going to basically talk about three main aspects of that plan, right? So we're going to talk about what the, like how the testing itself, like to compare the frameworks we need to run those tests, or how is that testing actually going to happen? We're going to talk about the reporting, so like the results that we're getting, how do you make that result work for you, make it useful? And then the last bit, of course, is to like sort of, okay, so now we have all this data, what do I do with it? Like, where do I put it and things like that. So this is essentially like sort of what the game plan. So like I said, so like he came to me, but I decided to look at it from this perspective of like, okay, he could have come to me with any sort of framework. I don't really care what that framework is. All I care about is the fact that he's written unit tests for me. And my job is now to like sort of help him figure out how to sort of run those unit tests. We needed to work on iOS and Android. Of course, it's in Xamarin. That's another given. So it's like he's written, it's like he wants them to target a Xamarin app. So it's like, great, okay. Yeah, and then of course there's also the added goodness of all of this has been automated. Also, not really touching upon that, but do note that all these steps are like sort of created that in the sense that this should this would all sort of fit into like an automated, really cool and really simple sort of DevOps process, right? So pulling it back, so today's talk, like I said, 3 main parts, and this is what we'll be talking about. So I'm going to start with talking about the test part. Then I'm going to tell you about how the reporting, and last bit will be like the analysis and the dashboard. And I'd like to like share with you what our thinking was, what the requirements were, and how we went about sort of solving it. So with that, let's get started. So like I said, the first requirement is that, so he's written the unit test. So now if it figured out like, okay, so we've got the tests. We have to figure out, we need to find what can run it for us on iOS and Android. We need it to be, of course, within something that is supported with .NET and something that supports unit tests, correct? So let's talk about this, right? So we have, in the world of unit testing with xamarin.forms, the two popular choices. Again, I'm not saying it's wrong or right at this point. I'm just like sort of highlighting the options that we have. So we have NUnit, which has its device runner that's called NUnit Xamarin. And then there's XUnit, and it has XUnit devices, which are the runners that help it run on, iOS and Android. Take, as with all of my testing talks, as I'm known to say, just test. I really don't care what framework you use. If you want to use XUnit, go ahead. You want to use NUnit, go ahead. But I decided, since XUnit seemed pretty popular and I like batting for the underdog, no one seemed to be like, I didn't see too many like blogs. I didn't see a lot of like love for NUnit and NUnit Xamarin, and it's a pretty decent framework. I don't know if you have a chance to look at it, but it's there, it exists, it's pretty decent. So I was like, let's take a look at what it has, right? Because XUnit's been done and dusted, we've seen it. Also, I wanted to like explore how I could get something to run with UITest in App Center, because I cannot resist doing anything not UITest, right? So that's it. So our decision has been made. We are definitely going to be using NUnit and NUnit Xamarin. So as usual, I pull it in. It's a NuGet dependency, pretty easy, pretty straightforward. So like I said, Mike gave me the pre-done project. He's written out all these like amazingly large amount of tests. He's done most of the heavy lifting when it comes to like writing out the unit tests, right? So we pull in the NUnit.xamarin package, and what you see, the 2 screenshots, is what you get for free. So this is the default wrapper. This is what it looks like. This is so it gives you kind of like, it's like a basic Xamarin.forms wrapper essentially. So you get this in Android and iOS. And it like, so you'll get a run tests option, and then an option to sort of run it automatically by default. You don't want to click the button. Once the tests are complete, it'll give you like a short summary. You can click into all results, or you can click into failed results. If you have any failures, it'll list those. If you click on all results, it gives you this long list of all of the different tests that it ran, and clicking into each of this. So actually, let me just show that to you, right? Why am I just like talking about it? So let me pull my presentation away for a bit. So up on the right, this is actually the default NUnit runner, right? So if you look at it, if I click into all results, you can click in here. So we have a failure, you can click in, click into the success test. Okay, cool. Like not bad, not like pretty good, right? For like something that came for free by default, it's not too bad. Okay, so, but the thing is, it's not enough for us. Like when I pull this back up, it's not enough in the sense that I want to be able to run single tests. I don't want to do like a bulk run. And why you ask that is because, going back to the premise that Mike set up for me, he wants, like, the idea is we don't want it to see how long a whole bunch of tests take to run. We want to sort of, we're doing comparative analysis of a particular action done by 2 different frameworks. So the idea being, okay, we need to sort of see how each of those individual tests, like I don't want to be able to sort of go in and run each of these individual tests and then be able to sort of measure the performance per test. And as you can see, that currently isn't a feature, which is not a wrong thing. It's not a bad thing. Like, I see nothing wrong with it. So anyway, so let's fix the problem, right? So what I have pulled up over here is, this is what I was talking about. So this is the project itself. I have, let me move this to the side here. So zoom in over here. For the names are a little long, but bear with me. So essentially, we have the test targets up in here, the actual tests written out over here, the framework that we want to use. So for this sample that I'm sharing with you, this POC, I pulled in EF Core, and it's sort of just running basic, read, read, write. Oh, hi, David. You back to you. But yeah, so this is like so there's deletions, insertions, updates, the usual sort of tests. He's written those out for us. We not too worried about that. We'll come to the UI test portion of it in a bit. So what I want to talk about is the NUnit Xamarin. So I pulled out the NuGet, and instead I pulled in the NUnit Xamarin. Like I just cloned the repo that they have. So I'm on my branch with my wrapper updates. So it's not too complex. You'll be surprised. I honestly thought it would be a very complicated situation, but it's not. It's really easy to follow what's going on. So getting into it. So like I said, the first thing we're going to add, the first thing I wanted to update with what the default wrapper does is I want to be able to remove the all tests feature and sort of add. And I'm going to keep the run test. Like this is not going to go away. You can always have the bulk run option, but I want to add an option that lets you run individual tests, right? So essentially, the first thing I do is going to put in a separate button that's called Explore Tests, right? And all it essentially does is, what am I doing? Am I looking at export? No, I am going to go. I have notes on the side because I don't want this to be too wishy-washy, so it makes sense. All right, so that's it. So I'm going to look for I'm looking for essentially this one. So let's go find it. There we go. All right, so what we have up here. So this button command, essentially all it does is loading the test assembly and sort of getting the information on each test was already part of the system, that part of this wrapper. I didn't really need to add anything extra to this or do any extra shenanigans to sort of get the test, like the test application and sort of parse through it to get a list of tests. That was pretty straightforward. So all that's happening here is if there are no, so the summary essentially is the result summary. So if there is no results, like there are no tests that have run, it just sort of just grabs all of the list of the tests for us. If there are some tests that are run, it goes in and sort of make sure to populate its corresponding result for you. Once all of that is done, you sort of navigate away to a new page. So this is the new addition that I had to do. So I created a new page. But we'll go to the new page in a bit. Before that, I wanted to take a step back and just sort of talk about, okay, so what is this test package situation that's giving you these tests? So let me go check it out. So essentially, what you're seeing in the test package is the loaded tests. And what that does is it goes in sort of, like I said, a lot of this stuff is already in the Xamarin, like the NUnit runner, it's already in there. So all we're doing is just piggybacking off whatever they've provided. So this just goes through all of the tests it finds and just sort of makes it into a nice little list and just finds all of the single tests for you. So, and it goes down in a hierarchical path. So when we first click into Explore Tests, you'll just see the main sort of test fixtures. And then when you click into each test fixture, then it'll give you a list of each individual test. So it goes, as of now, the way it's structured, it goes step by step. So we can always sort of build on this. Let's call this a building project. I'm still working on this. I wanted it to be sort of ready and perfect by today, but it's obviously not. But as of today, this is where it's at, and it's enough for what I'm trying to accomplish at this moment, right? And the results summary that I was talking to you about, so we're going to come back to the state custom JSON in a bit, but essentially this helper is again provided to you by the default NUnit wrapper. So I haven't changed anything in there. I'm literally just taking whatever they provide. So it just sort of summarizes the test results using this interface that they have called iTest result, and it populates it for you very nicely in a list. So it put everything into nice little lists, which are super nice because we can display lists in Xamarin. So that's awesome. Sweet. So let's talk about the new view that we added, right? So this is what's called so I call this the explore view. So it, like I said, since there are tests that are coming in, sorry, it's a list of tests that are coming in. I have a list view in there. All it does is gives you like a list of all the different tests that you can see. Up top, similar to the run test button that's already part of the system, I pull back that run test button in case you ever need to, at any point as you're going down the hierarchy, all the list of tests that are visible to you on that screen, you'll be able to have an option to bulk run the whole test if you do not want to individually run each test. Again, sort of just keeping the options open at this point, because you never know, right? Sweet. So so down in here it's basically just a generic simple list, nothing fancy. The UI is not the greatest. It gives, all I did do was I added like a binding color. So each row, there's a little indicator that'll be green or red if you already have tests run, and that will indicate like the success or failure. So the view itself, again, straightforward. If you ask me why I did not use collection view, honestly, just laziness. This can easily be a collection view, but I was just trying not to over engineer. List view seemed to work fine, so I just stuck with the list view. Maybe the next iteration I'll make it a collection view. Who knows? Maybe if David Ortnow buys me candy, I might do it. Just telling you, David. So moving on. In the Explorer view itself, I will pull up the UI in a bit, or maybe I should pull up the UI in a bit so it makes a little bit more sense. Do I have it? I don't have it running yet. So let me get this running so I can show you what the UI sort of looks like as we walk through it. But essentially, like I said, so this will make a list of tests. Great, lots of lists. So the two main sort of parts at this point that's important, that this took me a little while to figure out, to be honest, and I had a little bit of help. There is a effort, there was a PR that was made towards adding single test support, which was not merged in, and I just happened to look at it, and this is kind of where I got stuck, and I was really thankful to that PR, and I have a reference link to it. It's referenced in the README in the GitHub that I'll share the link to of this whole project. But yes, I was able to sort of just look at how that reference PR was doing it, but essentially they did a really cool approach where this explore view sort of stays the same, and we don't have multiple explore views, as you can see. So if you go from a test fixture that goes into a particular test, you just sort of like repopulate this Explorer view to like just include all the other sort of tests in there. And let's see what my friend is up to here. Why doesn't it like my open simulator? Are you going to connect? Oh, there we go. Okay, sweet. Xcode hasn't given up on me. That's always a good sign when you're doing a demo. All right, so like I said, so two possible paths. When you select a test in the list, if you have already run the test and if it's like a test fixture that has other tests inside of it, it'll go to this navigate children, which essentially just checks if it's a test fixture. Cool, let's load all the tests inside of it, put it into a list. If there's any results attached to it, we'll parse it through, and it'll reload the same Explorer view, the view that we're in, and just like repopulate it with the new tests in it. And it's, so like I said, it sort of like goes hierarchy. It goes down and filters and filters and filters. Filters are very important when it comes to NUnit. So that's how you sort of understand what the tests are, what they're doing. The next possible path at this point is, suppose the test is already run and there is a result attached to it. So this is a situation where it's a single test. You click on that single test, and you've got a list of like results attached to it. Okay, cool. So you just want to go see you want to see the information, you want to see the details. You're not really interested in seeing, you don't want to see another list of tests. And the other third potential is, it's a single test. It's not like a test fixture. So let's run this test, right? So the three possible sort of paths that could happen here. And so that's essentially, that's it. That's the gist of what the Explorer, sort of view model does. Let me look at my notes in case I missed anything. Oh, yes, I have a note in here that says the test view. So the test view is what we were seeing before. This is essentially what is the visual representation of the test result. So, if it's a failure, it'll give you the stat failure and things like that. Stat trace and the reason the test failed. If it's passed, it'll tell you how long the test took and things like that. So that's what test view is. So test view actually is the default test view that was already provided in the wrapper. Again, this is not something I added, just used what they had, right? Because that it served the purpose of what I was trying to do. Sweet. So I'm going to show you. So when this whole thing is put together, this is what it essentially comes down to. So when you hit explore test, all my beautiful breakpoints are going to hit. I put in the breakpoints purely to show off to all of you that I'm not faking it. This totally works. But yeah, so let's go. So like I said, you can run 9 tests. There's the base tests coming in here. I need to fix it. It's being a little too aggressive and trying to like find all the different test fixtures. This is also the genius of Mike Parker. He made an interface for the tests. It's awesome. That should be a separate talk of its own. I will convince him to share it with you another day, how he wrote these tests. But anyways, let's go into the insert performance test. So I should probably get rid of these breakpoints at this point. It's just going to keep interfering. So hold on. We don't need them anymore. I've proven to you. I truly have written this and this totally works. All right, so I'm going to now hit run test just to like show you like, so this is one option where you just sort of just like do a bulk run of all the tests. It indicates if it's passed or failed. When you click into it, there's an extra navigation, which I will fix, I promise, but this is what it looks like. So now you can see individual test results. If you want to come into a failure, hey, this is what a failure looks like. Right? So that's one way to do this. Like you want to maybe just do like a bulk run of each test fixture. Suppose you don't want to do that, right? You want to just do a single test run. So again, I come in here at this point, this is the single test. When I click on this, now it only runs the single test and you can see the results of that test, right? So cool. So also those of you who have used XUnit, this is something that's already a part of XUnit, which is super nice, but I wanted to give some love to NUnit because look how cool it is. Now it's doing stuff we wanted to do. And of course, you can always do like the whole, the bulk run test off the main page as you need, and it'll give you the full result. And then you can always go and look at the one failed, path. Another reason I wanted to like sort of set it up this way is also because I was future planning for when I want to run this on App Center test. And, I need to run and measure those individual test performances. I need the ability to, I need like this ability and I need this sort of flexibility to be able to like, oh, okay, maybe I just want to run this particular subset or I want to run just a single test and then measure the performance as it goes. So there was a little forethought put into it. And then, like I said, I got a little stuck trying to like sort of traverse through this individual test. But then, like I said, that PR was super helpful. Super thank you to the person who worked on it. And so their code, I've referenced their code. I'll share the link to that. And yep, so as of right now, so I'm going to go back to my slides because I put a lot of efforts in these slides. So if you like them, let me know. But this is where we're at now. So part one of the problem, the first phase was updating the wrapper itself to work for us, which is we needed to add the ability to run individual tests, which now we do have it. So that's great. That's perfect. So we just saw that. Let's move on. So now comes to part two. So part two is a little more interesting. There are two camps to it, completely fine. There's nothing right or wrong. Like I said, this is something particular that I wanted just because of the way I intended to use the test results that were coming through. So the thing is, right now, as you can see, our results are coming in in a visual format. So you have to you either see like an overall result here, or I have to go down, click into each test, and then I get like a visual representation of the status of each test. And as part of NUnit, as we know, NUnit itself, we do get the default, NUnit XML report. This is why this was like something, I wanted to like tackle next. So the next problem being, this is a two-part problem now. So we have the default NUnit result from the NUnit reporter, which is great. It's an XML. It's great. I don't have anything against XML, but it's a lot of information. And also the report right now, it gets exported to a local path. So it's like tied to the simulator path or tied to the device path wherever you're running it. Like I mentioned, I intended to run this on App Center. I wanted to get a bulk result from a lot of different devices. And I needed to figure out a good way to now connect the results of these being run on devices that are not sitting on my desk right now. Not that I'm saying that I own like a little device farm or something, but at some point I needed to okay, so the next step was how do I now extract those results? And I'm not talking about like the UI test results. I'm talking about these results that I have of each test running, and I need to extract those out. So what does one do? One goes to Azure, because we love Azure, don't we? Of course we do. Everybody loves Azure. So let me pull up where my brain went. So my brain went to Azure Blob Storage. I'm like, hey, what if I? Oh look, hi Brandon. But he says, hey, what if I were to as the test run is complete, I have the report, that XML report, like it's locally stored, it's generated. I have it. I just need to store it somewhere before it gets, deleted from the device. So I was like, sweet, let's put this in a blob storage. And MS Docs is always my favorite place to go in the world. They have a doc that walks you through it. So once you've done, the Azure stuff, you create your container. There are, again, awesome docs that walk you through that as well. I have resources to that too. It's up in the GitHub repo, and I'll share the slides later. So if you come in here, once you've done the prerequisites, which I've already completed, you can literally go in. So this is like a separate sample. What I was really curious to see was I literally just need a service that will take the blob, create a blob and just upload it. That's it. That's like a simple, straightforward process that I need right now. Really don't need anything too fancy. So, set up the connection string, make sure the file name is, unique, create the blob container, and, get the blob client, and going to look at this upload. So all of the code that I used in the sample is literally all that's in the docs itself. I was not trying to reinvent the wheel. So let me show you what that ended up looking like, right? So first, after setting up all of the blob storage stuff in Azure, I have a constants file which has my connection string in there, which I'm not going to show to all of you because security. And that's essentially what's coming in through here. The rest of it, I created a little blob service. And all I'm doing is all the steps that I showed to you in the doc. It gets the storage account information, creates a blob client. If it was not created before, it creates a test, it creates a container, and this is but I already had created the container in in Azure portal, so I just pulled down the name for it. I should probably maybe move this into a constant situation too, because there's a nice potential here that you could make it a DevOps step or something and have different containers for if you're sort of running this with different versions, or you want to do a nightly smoke. I mean, there's a lot of customization possible. You can run with this. It's really cool. So the next thing, what essentially happens is it creates a container. I provide it with this blob reference, and that's where the hooking up of the button happens, and we'll come to that in a second. But essentially, it just takes the file name. Right now, you will see this is pulling in the JSON, and you'll be like, wait, JSON? What? You just said XML. Friends, you can make this XML. It's a string. It doesn't really matter. I made it a JSON. But yeah, so essentially, after that, you come in, and I put in a console write line just for my sanity's sake, so I know this is complete. But there is also a visual confirmation that tells you if the export was a success or not. Because again, I live and breathe UITests, so you cannot pull that out of me. So I needed a visual confirmation also in the app that gives you a success or fail. And you'll be like, what is this test data blob reference, Wiki? It's just a object, you guys. It's got the name, and like I said, it's a string. I'm going to make it into a JSON, and I'll explain that to you in literally 10 seconds. But this can be the default XML if you want to use the default XML. So we've solved the first half of the problem. The report is not living on the simulator. It's not living in the device. Let me just quickly check the time. Okay, I'm good on time. Sweet. Okay, so now I can welcome you to the next part of the talk, which is Sweekriti rants against XML. All right, so there we go. That's what I was looking for. Okay, bump up the font size. All right. So welcome to Sweekriti's rant against XML. So why don't I want to use the default? This, my friends, is the default XML that we get. Again, I have all the love in the world for NUnit. I don't really hate it. It's just that all I really want to do is just understand how long the test took. I want the name of the test, and that's basically it. And all the other information that I want, honestly, it's not off related to the test itself. It's more just on, hi, I want to sort of understand. I just want to like understand what device it was, what was the framework used, what was the version of the framework used, what was the OS version, and things like that. So it's more device related than it is test related. And I don't need all of this information, because later on I also have to figure out how to display this, because it's not like I have a built-in metrics dashboard system that I'm plugging this into. I'm sort of creating something custom of my own. So with this freedom in place, with this sort of having this flexibility in controlling how I want the reporting to work, I decided to sort of, okay, let's not use this extremely complex for this particular situation. For everything else, this XML report is awesome. There's so many systems in the world that just use this, it's great, just not for this specific situation. So instead, what I did, or what I want to do, is I want something kind of simplified, and something like this, right? So instead, I chose to go with the JSON approach. And there's another reason I used this data type also, which will make sense when we go into phase 3. But for now, I'm like, this is much more readable. Even if I were to just simply open this up and look at it, I'm like, oh yeah, pretty, looks nice, less number of lines. So like I said, I'm grabbing for now what's relevant information for me as of today. I just want what the device is doing, what framework is running, version of the framework, version of the device, and how long the different test runs took. Correct? That's it. Also, please don't be alarmed by the numbers that you're seeing. It says 5,000, but for the purposes of this demo, I actually reduced it to 5 records, so stuff actually finishes running. So yeah. So all right. So the decision has been made. We're gonna go with JSON, just because this is too complex, and also it doesn't really help with the next part of the problem when we come into reporting. This is way too much information. And so how do we go about making that change, right? So now comes the next part. So I'm going to go back to the summary view. I'm going to stop running this. So I'm going to make a couple of changes. First thing, like I said, I want to add that label, right? So I want to make sure I have a label that tells me if the export was a success or not. Next thing, I do a binding to that label that has a status of it that's export success. So it tells you if it's like exported and it's not exported. And then I add another button, and the button is literally just called export results. What does this button do, you ask? Let's talk about it. Okay, so I keep looking to the left because I have notes up here, and your chat is up here. All right, so we were talking about the button. I need to hook it up. So this is the default not exported. This is, of course, here is where the exporting is happening. So I was honest with you. I did try and use the default XML. It wasn't my style. I'm sorry. So we're going to customize it. So I'm going to make it my own. But all this button basically does is, if it doesn't work, it throws the error. That does an issue. Please go check it out. But if it's a success, it's a success. And in my UITests, all I hooked up was, after pressing the export button, I just wait for the status to match the string. That's it. So then I know that, okay, yay, it went through. Next up is to see how one gets the custom JSON. How does one get the custom JSON? Let's see. Was it a question that came in? No, there's no questions here. All right. So how do you look at it? So I'm gonna go in, where am I going? I'm going to result summary. Sorry. Right, here we go. So this is where the custom JSON gets generated. So this is the test data blob, the object that we talked about before. Test data, this is a helper that's provided by the NUnit like this is what NUnit itself uses to generate its XML report. So I'm just sort of, again, piggybacking off what they already have to generate a JSON version. And we just saw what that JSON was. So that's essentially all I'm doing here. It's nothing too fancy. I use essentials to get, essentials, to get all of the, device information, manufacturer information, what have you. Anything that you would need. You can, again, completely keep building on this, add any other relevant information or whatever your requirements are. So this was the minimum required information that I thought would be good for the first version of this. So it comes in here. All of the, we have, so the this is where the result per fixture come through, and then I'm just like sort of serializing it into the whole thing to go into a JSON, and that's it. Only sort of tip I would add is if you're putting it in, so right now this is going into one single blob, but in the future, if as I expand this, probably just want to take care that my file name makes sense. But that's about it. This whole portion is super straightforward. So let me again, now that all of the export stuff is in there, let's quickly see what the export would look like. And oh my God, we're still on time. So that's pretty good. Once the export comes in, I just want to show you visually what it looks like. And those are the visual cues that I sort of use to hook up the UI tests for this. So again, let's go back in here. I'm going to run all of the tests. And so the test is complete. As you can see, the export status is not exported right now. I'm going to hit export. Result success. Woohoo! That's awesome. Where does this go? Great question. It does go somewhere, I promise you. So this is my container. Let's refresh this. And we're looking for iPhone X. Was it 1209? Okay, here we go. This is one. So iPhone 12, sorry, iPhone 12, not iPhone X. So this is the result that came in. And it's in my blob storage. As you can see, I've got a few other runs in there. But yeah, that's it. So now we solved the second part of the problem. So we've got the results going from devices to a centralized location. So we have our reports over here. And the report went from super complex to something a lot more readable, right? So this is good. Let me go back to my slides. So boom, 2 steps done, right? So we've got a custom formatted report and we've got it exporting to blob storage. So success. Sweet. Now we come to the last, and I mean, everybody said this would be easy, but it was not for me. I do not know why, but this was the last bit. Coming up with, now we have the results. They're in a easy to read formatable JSON, but what do we do? And how do we just report it so it makes sense? And it's not too hard because, we love Azure. We're already in Azure. We already use blob storage. We use JSON, building up to this point. And now it'll make sense. So I decided I'm going to use Power BI because, why not? I'm already in Azure. There's all of the Azure services talk really well to each other, right? So it'll be pretty, easy to set up. And then with Power BI, then I have the power to create, those custom, data tracking. And then I could then hand it over to Mike and he could create, whatever custom, charts that he needs and reports that he needs. So let's do that. So we're going to create a Power BI dashboard. But if you've all been noticing, I am on a Mac, and the Power BI dashboard, like the desktop, you need to use the Power BI desktop to, do the initial hookup, which is on Windows. There please don't be afraid, because I totally thought this up and I thought of this in advance, and I recorded myself doing the initial few steps. And there are docs that explain, this whole process. It's super straightforward. But in case you want like a quick recap on how Power BI dashboards are created, you come into open up Power BI desktop. And then you can hit get data. And like I said, it's already like super easily hooked up. You pick Azure, it'll load up, those reports that you see, the extension times JSON, and then you just hit transform data, not simply load data, because we'll have to transform it before we can use it. When you hit transform, it opens up you'll see the data come up here. Then there's a bit of like data manipulation that you have to do. This is what took me a little while to, sort of figure out. And I'll be perfectly honest, it took me like an hour or so to understand what I was doing, because I was very confused why my data wouldn't show up and why my rows were columns and my columns were rows. But in case you were curious on what was going on, essentially when you get the default report over here, you want to get like, just from easy for me to follow, I just deleted all of the unnecessary columns which didn't have any information that I need. All what was important are like, is the content. Once you have the content left, you just want to right click and parse it as JSON. And then once you parse it as JSON, it just turns into records. And once you have the records, you have this magical little arrow button at the top. And once you click that, that does this expansion, and that pulls up all the different values in it and creates it into columns and pulls in all the data from the JSON files in there. That was so cool. So yeah, so this is the first half. And then there's records inside the records. So you just repeat the process. And that's about it. Once I had that set up, I was then able to hook it all up and look at this magnificent report that I created. Again, don't be alarmed by any of the numbers. This is all of the, the simulator fake runs that we have been doing right now with just 5 records. So they're not 100% accurate, but they are enough to just show you what the reporting can look like. So this is what the iOS dashboard would look, it sort of looks that I created, so just like sort of tracking what the performance is. And then, like I said, there's a lot of flexibility at this point with what you want to do. And this was one of the more important bits of the whole project. We really wanted to be able to have a good way to visualize what is, going on. So this is the de facto sort of default Android one. And let me show you the rest of it. So let me actually pull up the actual report. So I very geniusly clicked on it already. But once it was published, it's a shareable published link. So here I am looking at it from my Mac. So when we come in here, you can see these are all of the results that we came in. You can totally edit it. You can't add a new source at this point, but you can add a lot of cool visual things. Again, I am 100% plugging Power BI. I really like it. If you are curious why, another reason I chose that JSON as a reporting tool was because I knew it would be easy to parse and it would give us all the relevant information when it came into sort of connecting that Azure portion to a report, a custom report that I get to control. Correct? So that was the reason why the thought process went in that way. So, I think I hope David likes it. I know he likes reports apart from pull requests. So look, I made pretty graphs for you, David. Please enjoy. There's something else I wanted to highlight here and totally blanked. But so a cool thing. I literally just want to plug this because I found this very cool. The fact that I could just come in here and filter by platform was super nice, and I'm so happy that the JSON reports have let me do that. So having it as a field there helps sort of make sure that the reports can be divided by platform. We could also take it down and even divide it by the framework that we tested, because that's another sort of value that I have that you could use. So it helped that we put a little bit of thought into it. It sort of helped, we put a little thought into it, just sort of be aware when we were making decisions on what kind of reporting to use and what kind of formatting to use and things like that. So that was cool. Super nice. That was a point of success for me. So here we are, our 3 steps, right? So we got the wrapper updated. We've got the reporting tool updated to work for what we need. And Power BI stuff is working. So woohoo. So where does that leave us now? That's it, friends. We've succeeded. I have to say it was really fun to achieve something very useful this summer, considering the summer that we've been having. Getting this to work from end to end was very, very fun. But it's Sweeky and it's tests, and there's a million tests I haven't run. Just you wait. There's more to do. There's obviously, this is a work in progress, and I intend to add a few more features, which I discovered in the process of creating this version 1 of this wrapper. And Mike and I have also been discussing this. It's like, this would be really good next, phase 2 features to add into this. So things that I'm talking about is, if you noticed, like right now, not the sim I want. This is the sim I want. So the export button is attached now to the overall test run. But I feel like one should be able to have an option to be able to export out these individual test runs. So that's something I don't have yet, but it's pretty straightforward now that I have the initial groundwork going for this. Another thing you would have noticed is right now the results only have how long each test took to run. I don't really have the performance data getting pulled in. So that's part 2 of this, right? So I now need to figure out if I should be maybe pull out the performance data from maybe the App Center reporting, or maybe I can just sort of make it agnostic and not use that, but figure out a way to just track the performance in the app itself. The next thing is creating an interface. So the reporting type, like I said, this was very specific to our use case where I wanted it to be JSON, but Mike made a good point when we were discussing it that we should probably make it give the power to whoever is using the tool and let them like either pick from a list or make it a test option that you like, hey, just put JSON or put XML, or make it an interface that's like custom and they get to implement it. So I thought that was a good one to do. And the last bit is a little bit of a something that I personally want to do is I want to see, want to make it more continuous, because right now it's on like this POC is manually triggered, so I have to just go manually refresh that Power BI dashboard. But it's really easy to connect this to like stream analytics and make it a continuous process. So anytime there's a new report that's get pushed into that blob storage, the report automatically refreshes. It's not a super big step, but it's worth highlighting. And another thing that I haven't put down here, which is a cool thing to add, would be making Azure DevOps sort of automate a lot of the rest of the process. So in DevOps, this is something Alex Blob, my manager, and I were talking about, which would be, so in CS Proj, right, one can go in and sort of update the version number. So idea being, using Azure DevOps, I could make multiple versions of the Xamarin.forms app and keep changing up the version numbers of Xamarin.forms, or changing the version number of the framework. Like, for example, the EF Core, they just launched EF Core 5, but you'll notice these tests were done on 3.1. So instead of me having to manually update the project, I'd like to figure out a way that I can get Azure DevOps to just sort of go in and update that NuGet to use the latest version of the NuGet, and then just run these tests and generate the report. So there's a few other pieces of automation to tie into this, which would, I feel, really bring out a lot more in this. So that's it. So this was the POC, abstracted out version of what Mike and I worked over this summer. I thought it was something cool, and I thought you guys would like it, and like me to not talk about Xamarin UITests for a change. So yeah, so like I mentioned, I'll make sure I share this out separately, but I'm just going to leave this slide hanging for now in case you want to go check it out. The README in the repo also has these lists, all of the resources linked in over there. And we have some time for questions. So anyone? Oh, yeah. Hi, David. Yes, please go fill out the survey that David just put in. Anyone have... I'm open to questions. The slide is up. Feel free to screenshot it if you want it right now, or you want to have go check out the README in the repo. But yeah, I am now open for anyone who wants to ask any questions. Unless I missed any, let me check. I'm scrolling through your the chat if I missed any. Okay, I'm not seeing. Oh, oops. Sweet. Doesn't look like you guys have questions, which means it was super successful. I'm going to assume all of you totally understood all of this, and we'll now go write more tests and test everything. All right, then. So I can give you guys some time back. I'm checking. Sweet. All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing. I'm gonna go out and maybe tweet out just the link to the repo for now, and then figure out how to get the rest of the slides to everyone. So thank you everyone for watching. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.